if you had known how to suffer, then you wouldn't have had to suffer. It says in the Acts of John. So that's fine. We can join in the party and do whatever do whatever we want to do until we do find ourselves in a tricky situation, and then we realise that we have been shortchanged. We've been shortchanged because we never learned how to suffer, and so we have to suffer. So we could say that society shortchanged us. But it's no good blaming society because we went along with it, so we could blame ourselves. But either way, we've been shortchanged, and that's how we get to learn it, when it really sinks in, because we get a bit smarter then. When we're partying, we're kind of a bit dizzy, really. We're not really relating to reality at all, just to our euphoric ideas about reality. So that's fine. So then you might say, okay, since you're so smart, how do you suffer? I'll enroll for that. Tell me, how do you suffer? And this is, of course, where it gets a little hard to answer. But what we could say, we learn to suffer by stopping playing all of our tricks. So when we give up our tricks, as Rumi says, when you give up your tricks, that'll be your smartest trick. So that's negative therapy in a nutshell. We're not really learning any new tricks. We're giving up our old tricks. We're giving up all of our tricks. Which, needless to say, isn't quite as easy as it sounds. It's not as easy as all that, but nevertheless, however challenging it might be, and however arduous the process might be of giving up our tricks, it's worth it. It's not a question of, oh well, it's too difficult, maybe I just won't, maybe I'll try something else, or maybe I'll just get by without it. Because it comes to the point when the big squeeze is on. If we want to do ourselves a favour, we have to give up our tricks. And there isn't anybody that actually wants to put themselves through extra suffering, super suffering, suffering that just goes on getting worse, and suffering which is meaningless suffering, unconscious suffering. If we knew what we were doing, we wouldn't do that. We wouldn't let ourselves in for that. So there's several ways we can talk about the trick. What is our trick that we don't want to give up, and that we don't even know it is a trick, so we don't even know that we could give it up. So one way of looking at the trick is to say that we have created the situation for ourselves where we believe that we're in control, and that feeling of being in control, which is perceived self-efficacy, is a source of security for us. It feels okay. So as long as we can continue to believe in our perceived self-efficacy, and feel that we are in control, then that's our trick. It's a trick because it's a gimmick. We're sidestepping things. We're not taking it on the chin because we've turned everything around, because the truth is that we're not in control. Now, in terms of the game that I'm playing, I can be in control there to a certain extent, or some of the time. I can choose certain things which I can control and then build a world around those things and just concentrate on those things. But that isn't reality, that's a game. Reality itself I can't control. That's fairly obvious kind of a statement. If I could control reality, then it wouldn't be reality, it would just be something that I have created myself, which would just be a projection of myself. It would just be me escaping into a little bubble of myself and my ideas and my projections. I mean, obviously I can't create reality. What I create is by definition not reality. It's me, or it's more tricks. I can produce maybe more comfort bubbles, comfort zones. I can create different games. But reality itself, there's no control. The idea of control is not fitting, really. Why would you want to control reality? And to what ends? And in what way? It just doesn't make any sense at all. In fact, the only reason we would want to control reality would be to make it continue to fit in with our ideas of what it is, which weren't true in the first place, but which we would want to perpetuate. And that is kind of what we do, so that is our trick. And the other way of looking at this trick is to say that what we do is we create a world for ourselves that matches our expectations or preconceptions or assumptions. So we create a known world for ourselves, which we can definitely know. And that's akin to control. We're controlling how we perceive the world. And that's a trick, because there's no challenge in that. It's just like no surprises in it. It's very familiar. So we've tamed reality. We've made it into something that's not going to bite us. It's not going to radically surprise us. It's not going to do something that we never thought it was going to do. So both of these tricks provide us with a sense of security, but both of these tricks backfire on us. And they backfire when we discover either A, that we can't control reality, which then becomes very freaky for us, but because we've got habituated to the idea that we should be able to, and that we'll be very distressed by suddenly learning that we can't. Or B, we will see that the world is completely unknown to us, and that all of our ideas about it are completely irrelevant. And then that's hugely challenging, because we felt pretty confident within the terms of our game, which is a very, very small little world. And if that game just pops like a soap bubble and we find ourselves in a big, strange, vast territory, we don't feel so confident anymore. But it's not just a matter of not feeling confident. We've actually constructed our identity on the basis of the false world that we have adapted to. So now our identity is also exposed as being not real either. So we really haven't got a leg to stand on, and that is, again, very, very challenging. So here are two very, very difficult situations that at some point or other we can expect. Well, we won't expect it, but it's because we don't expect it that it's so bad, so painful for us. So this is how the tricks that we play don't work for us really. And the way that the tricks don't work is that they work when everything's kind of easy going, but when things get challenging, then they're not really good for that. The little comfort zone is not good for dealing with suffering. It's just good for dealing with things that don't challenge us, things that are comfortable for us. So when we learn to live in the world which is our own trick, i.e. to live in the world in which we're in control, or to live in the world in which we are the knower of whatever's going on, we understand it, we can't suffer consciously then. All of our suffering has been, well, the whole point of the trick is so that we don't suffer. We don't have to be exposed to reality. So then when reality does come along in a big enough way so to impact us, then we don't know how to suffer, and so then we really do suffer. Very obviously, if we hadn't relied on the trick the whole time, then we would be developing a relationship with reality as it is, and so no matter what happens, it wouldn't come as such a terrible shock to us, because we wouldn't have denied it. So really our trick is ultimately to deny reality for what it is, or the world for what it is. And our trick is also therefore shutting down. We've shut down to the actual shocking newness or uncertainty of reality. And we've created a very predictable, safe world, which one day is going to fail us. If it had been the case that we hadn't shut down, then whatever happens, it's not blindsiding us. It's not coming to us from a place that we can't understand, and that means that we're not opposed to it. In principle, if I'm in denial of something, then I'm definitely opposed to it. Actually, what I'm saying is, this is a very, very, very bad thing. And I'm saying that implicitly because I wouldn't have denied it unless it was very, very bad. Denial is a big kind of a thing to do. You don't do it for nothing. It kind of proves in an unconscious kind of a way that there's something very, very bad there, i.e. reality, when it comes down to it, even though it might seem a bit strange to say that. So really I've made an enemy there, and my trick is to make the unexpected or uncontrollable or unknown aspect of reality not exist for me. And that's how I deal with things. And so I don't ever have the muscle for dealing with reality. I don't develop that muscle. I don't need to develop that muscle, because I'm living in reality. I'm living in the virtual reality world that's been created by my thoughts. But of course, we can never actually forget about things as they actually are in themselves. We can't afford to forget about them, because they're always there, and they're the only thing that are there. So It's like the line in the song, you can't run away from the truth because the truth is all there is. I can't remember who wrote that song. We're trying to run away from it, and we can kid ourselves that we have run away from it, but there's nowhere to run to. There's no other place, there's no other thing apart from the truth. So, what happens then is that, well, what happens as soon as we opt to ignore reality is that we create a situation in which our inner compass is pointed towards security, and security is our God in this case. And so everything is perceived on the basis of security. If something makes me feel more secure, that feels good. If it makes me feel less secure, then that is a bad thing. That's a frightening and a worrying thing. So in this case, what I'm basically trying to say in a roundabout kind of a way is that as reality manifests, or as my illusions weaken, instead of reacting to the expanding of my world as an exciting thing and an interesting thing, because I'm orientated towards security, and because I have turned my back on the bigger picture, this process whereby my world gets bigger and reality starts to make itself known to me is interpreted as the worst of all possible things. There's nothing worse than that. There's nothing more frightening than that. And that's just another way of saying that in the unconscious mode, fear is our master. Now we might not think we're afraid, but that's because we have successfully banished the truth of our situation. Therefore we don't need to be afraid. But because we can never genuinely banish the truth of our situation, which is unconditioned reality as it is before we make it into what we'd like to think it is, the fear is always there. The fear is always there because the truth is always there. And so, the fear of ever really understanding what's going on, because we're actually opposed to understanding what's going on at this stage, insight is our enemy. Knowing anything is our enemy. We're actually driven by fear in everything we do. So although I might think I'm doing this because of this, I'm doing that because of that, because the things that I'm doing have some inherent value or worth in themselves, that's just the cover story. Really I'm doing whatever I'm doing to increase my sense of security. And my motivation to increase my sense of security isn't a conscious motivation, it's fear. And it's not conscious fear either, it's fear that's operating on me without me knowing that it is fear. In fact, far from knowing that it's fear, I actually perceive fear as being what I truly, honestly, really want. So, for example, if I desire something, I say, I want that. I feel that I really, really want it. And that means it's me that I want it. It's my own self that really wants it, which means it's kind of a free thing, it's my free volition. And the actual truth of the situation is that is the fear which is controlling me. And because everything is inverted, I experience being controlled by fear as myself exercising my true sovereign volition. And that might sound a little bit strange, but it's the same as addiction, really. If I'm addicted to heroin, I can very easily experience myself as actually wanting it myself, and say, yeah, I kind of fancy some gear. I'm going to make a phone call and See if I can make the connection, score a bit of gear, but it feels like it's me who wants to do it. But in actual fact I don't have any choice, because if I did try and fight against that wish, I discover that it's not my wish, it's the addiction, and the addiction controls me, which is something that's very well known indeed to everyone who's ever got caught up in an addiction. What we learn then is very, very valuable. We learn that we're not the boss, that the addiction is the boss, but the addiction will let us feel that we're the boss, just so that we don't know the addiction is there, which is exactly the same as what I was saying about the system of thought. Back away. I can't remember how far away that was, but that's exactly the same thing. So our situation when we're hiding from reality is one in which we perceive everything upside down. And that also means that when something happens, that's actually good news, because reality is dawning and we're being broken out of our prison cell. We experience this has been the worst thing possible instead of the best thing possible, and so we fight against it. So we're fighting against what is our greater good and perceiving it as something terrifying, and we're fighting a losing battle, even though we're trying to kid ourselves that it's not a losing battle, but deep down we've got this awful feeling about it. And so that's a good description of unconscious suffering. We're trying to deny our suffering, we're trying to deny everything, but what we're denying is coming up against our will, totally against our will. So that is truly a very refined form of suffering, and completely different from conscious suffering, where we're assenting to the process that's going on rather than being in total denial of it. Okay, thanks for watching.